Vibrations are wrong. There's a disturbing influence in this room. Someone is out of tune.
Welcome to the Luciferian Research Society podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Crow, and this is the 4th episode. The topic for today's show is tarot and divination. In this episode, we'll go over what tarot is, the types of readings that you can expect to get. We go over some examples of exercises that you can do to learn the tarot. I'll also be doing some readings for people who've submitted questions, and we'll be hearing a few opinions on specific cards that people feel affinity with. We've also got some music for you.
You will excuse me. I shall return.
First, I'll describe what a tarot deck is. A tarot deck is 78 cards. It's divided up into the major and minor arcana. The major arcana is composed of 22 cards. They each have a title, something along the lines of death or the lovers are some of the common ones that you may have already heard of. These are sometimes also called trumps or keys, as they are the most important cards in the deck. Sometimes people will do a reading with just these 22 cards. The minor arcana is composed of 56 cards. These are very similar to a regular deck of playing cards, the main difference being the name of the suits, and that instead of 12 court cards, we have 16 court cards. Instead of hearts, we have cups, which is representative of the element of water. Instead of spades, we have swords, which is representative of the element air. Instead of diamonds, we have pentacles or coins, or sometimes it's called discs, which is representative of the element earth. And we have the suit of clubs, which in the tarot it is wands. This is representative of the element of fire. So specifically, you have 1 or ace to 10 for each suit, as well as the 4 court cards for each suit, which are, there are a couple different schemes. Now, one of them is King, Queen, Knight, Page. That's one of the traditional ones. One of the more gender-neutral ones are King, Queen, Prince, and Princess. That's the one that I prefer. In the Thoth deck, which was designed by Aleister Crowley and painted by Lady Frida Harris, you have the scheme of King, Queen, Knight, Princess. Sometimes you'll find other less traditional schemes in the various different tarot decks that are out there. These 78 images each have a symbolic meaning that can be used for meditation purposes, gaining insight into your own life and the situations that you encounter. And it can also be used in divination, as in a tarot spread that's interpreted.
It's like television, only clearer.
There are a few different types of readings that you can expect to get if you go to a tarot reader or you receive a tarot reading from somebody that you know. One type of reading can be described as cold reading. Now, this is where somebody will read a person based off of their reactions to the things that they're saying. Usually, try and read the person based off of statistical information and hunches. And then whether the person reacts favorably or unfavorably, they'll move on or hone in on that particular insight. And that's how they kind of guide the person through thinking about how these ideas connect to their own inner self. a very common example of cold reading is on all of those different television shows where you see somebody claiming to speak with the dead relatives of the audience members. Now that's pretty much the classic example of what a cold reading looks like. They'll throw out things like, I see somebody with the letter M or D, and then they'll be like, oh, my father's name was David, or something like that. And they say, yes, that's who I'm talking about. That's who I see, right? They're standing behind you right now. Something, and then they go along in a manner similar to that. A lot of people consider this fraudulent. I guess it depends on the effect. It seems to have a calming effect, and it reassures and gives peace to a lot of people, it seems. So it definitely has that advantage to it. I personally have a problem with telling people that they're speaking with their dead relatives when actually they're just cold reading the person. Cold reading is actually a type of what we can call mentalism, which is actually a branch of stage magic. And saying that you're speaking with a dead relative is actually the patter, which in magician's terms is what you're telling the audience about what's happening to keep them distracted from what's actually happening, which is the trick. Now, some people do a cold reading type of reading without even realizing what they're doing consciously, and they may just simply be naturally using their own intuition, and that's just how they kind of get their clues, but they're not realizing how they're doing it. That can happen, and there is that type of thing that always is going to happen when you're interacting with somebody. You are communicating with the other person through body language. So in all types of readings that include face-to-face readings or some sort of instant feedback mechanism, say if it's over the phone or something along those lines, there can be an unconscious element of cold reading to all psychic or intuitive readings. Another type of reading that you might encounter is what I like to call the psychic or intuitive reading. This is when a sincere reader is just using the cards to trigger off a series of impressions that they then relate to the person that they're doing the reading for. They don't fully understand where these impressions are coming from, but they simply share them with the person that they're doing the reading for in hopes that they gain some insight from them. This is the type of reading that I personally do. There's another type of reading that you might encounter, and that's what I like to call the persuasive tarot reading. In a persuasive tarot reading, the person giving the reading has an ulterior motive. They then use the cards to explain what they want the person to do, but under the guise of giving them a tarot reading. This is something that is advocated in the Temple of Set. Again, like the cold reading, this is a method that is deceptive. If you intend to learn the tarot, you can consider each of these three types of readings as three separate techniques that can be learned and utilized, and like any tool, could be used for constructive or destructive purposes. And I leave that up to the conscience of the individual to decide what they feel is right or what they feel is acceptable to them.
You're nothing but a cheat and a swindler.
I'd like to share a little bit about how I came to the tarot. I had been exposed to divination early on in life. My father used to give tea leaf readings to other family members, and when I was around 8 years old or so, he taught me how to do that as well, and I thought it was really cool and fun. my grandmother would sometimes give readings to me by simply just by playing a game of solitaire with a regular deck of playing cards. But she had an idea of what each of those cards meant to her. And as she played and as different cards would turn up, she would interpret it and tell me my reading. I thought that was pretty cool. And eventually, when I was around 17, I took up the formal study of ritual magic. One of the books that I was working through the material of suggested the study of the tarot. I wanted to work through all of the exercises in the book, so I decided to get a deck. I got myself one of the Rider-Waite decks, and I studied it quite a bit. This included daily meditation on an individual card that I would draw from the deck randomly. I started with the major arcana first, and then went on to just picking a card from the entire deck. I also started to give readings to my friends for fun. It's funny because the first couple readings that I gave were pretty bad. I just drew a card and I told them what the position was supposed to mean, and I read that right from the little booklet that came with the deck. And then I would just read the list of keywords that were associated with that card out of the book. And they would always say, "What does that mean?" And I would always just say, "I don't know." I'm really new at this. But I kept trying, and I started getting the idea that some of the keywords would stand out more than others, and I would say those, and I would try and make sense of what it was meaning to me, or what my intuition was telling me. And as I went, I needed the book less and less, and I started to study the various systems of occult attributions to each of the cards, and that gave me a deep understanding of what the core symbolism of each of the cards meant. And instead of just looking at the image on the card and interpreting it based off of what I felt that the symbolism of the card was saying to me in relation to the context of the question, also where the root structure or the root symbolism behind all of those symbols that were depicted on the image. That's when I feel that I discovered the key of the entire system of the tarot. And at that point, it wasn't that difficult to just internalize the deck. And at this point now, you can use any deck, and really it's just an external representation of your own internal deck at that point. Like anything you do, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it.
To one who reaches the inner circle of the astral abode, such things are instantly known.
They are, huh?
Now I'm going to explain to you that key that I discovered to the root symbolism behind the cards of the tarot deck. As I mentioned before, each card has its own root symbol or symbols that all of the other images that you see on that card are built up around. The 22 major arcana cards are broken up into the 3 elements. Now this would be traditionally water, fire, and air, although sometimes other people will call that salt, sulfur, and mercury. There are the 7 planets. 7 of the cards of the major arcana are associated with the 7 planets of classical astrology. These would include the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Now, I just described those in the Neoplatonic or Chaldean sequence. This is based off of observations in the sky. Due to the motion of these planets and their cycles or orbits, it was determined that from a Terra-centric worldview, with Earth as the center of the universe and these stars, wandering stars, were revolving around, it appeared that these were the planets, this was the order of the planets from closest to furthest away from the Earth. So the moon would be on an orbit closest to the Earth, and then like concentric spheres. Beyond that, you have the sphere of the zodiac. These are the 12 signs that most people associate with their birthday. The final 12 cards of the major arcana are these 12 signs of the zodiac. In the minor arcana, you have the ace to 10 in each suit. In the Hermetic Kabbalah, which is a mixture of Egyptian and Jewish mysticism, you have a diagram called the Tree of Life. This has 10 Sephiroth, or spheres. The first one is the center of the universe, you could say. It's also the monad, which is everything all-encompassing as a whole, taken as a single unit. The second sphere is the point where that monad divides into multitude of separate objects or separate entities. This is representative of the 12 signs of the zodiac. The third sphere is Saturn, and then we go down the chain of planets, or the ladder of lights, it's sometimes called. Spheres 3 through 9 are the planets Saturn through to the moon, in the same sequence mentioned earlier. The 10th sphere is Earth itself, and represents the full manifestation in the physical world of the impulse started in the number 1, or ace. The 4 court cards, King, Queen, Prince, and Princess, represent the 4 main forces of the universe, personified by gender and stage of life. The king is established. He has a kingdom, otherwise he wouldn't be called a king. Or he has to govern that kingdom and ensure that it runs smoothly. He's invested in that kingdom. This is the one that gives the orders and sets the plan for that kingdom. Then you have the queen. This is the feminine counterpart to the king. She's already established, and her goal is to nurture and guide. Symbolically, this includes finalizing and manifesting the blueprint and original impetus provided by the king. Her own influence on this process further evolves the product. The prince is a character who goes out into the world, perhaps with ambition, seeking to gain his kingdom. He gathers his support team and prepares himself for rulership and leadership. The princess is the female counterpart of the prince. She is the one who represents the spirit of the earth. This is the spirit of nature. The princess represents fertility and the passion of youth. Each of these minor arcana cards, from ace to 10, and the 4 court cards, are each associated with a suit. As I mentioned before, each of these suits is related to one of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So the starting point is to take the basic symbolism of the Chaldean order of the planets, and along with Earth, the zodiac, and the center of the universe, and associate that within the realm of the specific element associated with the suit. To give a couple examples of this, we'll say the 7 of Cups would be the planet Venus and the element of water. Venus is the goddess of love and romance, and water relates to the emotions. Combine the two and you have romantic love. On the other hand, if we were to draw the card 7 of Wands, this would still be Venus, but it would be within the realm of fire. Fire are the passions. These are lust, rage, fierce motivation. When you combine these two, you would have something more along the lines of a lustful relationship, possibly a tumultuous relationship as well that involves a lot of arguing. You take this basic understanding and use that as a jumping point to allow intuition about the question that was asked to flow through, and you can relate the patterns that you see. In addition to these indicators, you also have the position of the card in the layout. Typically, a reading consists of more than just one card, although you can simply just do a one-card reading as I've described. Most tarot readings involve at least 3 cards. For a basic 3-card reading, a very common system of interpretation would include past, present, and future. So the first card that you turn up, you interpret that as something that happened in the past. The second card that you turn up will be something that is currently happening in the person that you're giving the reading for, which could include yourself, that's happening in their life. The third card is future. This is what's going to happen in the person's life that relates to the question that they're asking about. The other 2 things, you have to recall that you're being told about these past and present events because they continue to influence the outcome of what the person who's asking the question is looking for insight into. Some of the more detailed readings usually include a 10-card spread. A very common 10-card layout that's used very regularly in the tarot community is called the Celtic Cross. That's the type of reading that I started to learn is the Celtic Cross spread when I first started doing tarot readings. I used that spread for quite a long time because I was still learning tarot and I wanted to keep the structure the same until I got really good at that. Eventually I did develop my own 10-card spread and some other versions of spreads that I do that I've personalized. And I think ultimately once you develop your skills in tarot to a certain point, you're going to want to create your own tarot spreads that are customized for the types of readings that you like to do.
Say, that fella's pretty good.
If you've decided to take up the study of the tarot, I'd like to share with you a couple techniques that you can use to really get into the symbolism of it. The first exercise that I'd like to share with you is simply to color your own set of major arcana cards. First, you have to acquire a set of tarot cards that are just line drawings that are not colored and don't have gray shading or the black shading in them, so that you can do your own coloring within them. The builders of the Adytum, or BOTA, have a deck that is generally based off of the Rider-Waite deck, although it has been modified by Paul Foster Case the founder of the Builders of the Adytum, to agree more with his own personal occult philosophy. I find that it's a great deck, and I really enjoy the elaborations that he's made to the deck and the modifications. And I really enjoy the updates that he's made to those images. I also have a set that you can download and print off on my website, jeremycrow.com. The uncolored Major Arcana cards that I have on my webpage are from the Were Ra Lodge of the Golden Dawn. This is one of the last temples of the Golden Dawn that was still associated with the original order. The technique that's taught by the BOTA for coloring these tarot cards consists of taking one color and just coloring that color in on the one particular card, and then meditating on the card for an entire week. Then the next week, you color in a second color, and then you meditate on the card for an entire week. And you do that until all of the colors have been completed on the card, and you have a complete card. You then meditate on that complete card for a final week, and then you move on to the next. Obviously, this is quite time consuming, but certainly if you were to go through that full exercise, you would learn that particular deck that you're coloring very intimately. Certainly, it's your own prerogative that you can shorten the process. You can do one color per day. That would be a great exercise to give you a thorough introduction to the tarot deck. Once you've introduced yourself to the tarot by coloring a set of 22 Major Arcana cards, there's another technique that we can use to really emphasize the root symbol behind each of these cards. In this case, I recommend creating your own tarot deck. Essentially, this will be a set of flashcards. So what you can do is you can just buy a set of blank index cards. On each of these cards, you'll set aside 22 for the Major Arcana and 56 for the Minor Arcana. Each of the 22 cards will contain a basic symbol representing the essential element behind that card, along with the title of that card. For example, the Magician card would show the sigil for the planet Mercury and would say the Magician. The Devil card would have an image of the symbol for Capricorn and would say the Devil. Research the meaning of each of these 22 basic Hermetic symbols, the 3 elements, the 7 planets, and the 12 signs of the zodiac. Meditate on each of the symbols associated with these concepts. Once you've gone through the 22 Major Arcana cards, you're ready to move on to the 56 Minor Arcana cards. In this case, you can actually draw 4 discs on the 4 of Discs card, for example. The Ace of Cups card would contain an image of a single cup. These can be as elaborate or as simple as you like. The 4 court cards for each suit can be simply portrayed by drawing an image of the suit in the center of the card, be that swords, cups, wands, or pentacles, and then writing the title of the court card, whether that be king, queen, prince, or princess, or whatever other scheme that you prefer. The 10 numbered cards for each suit can also be labeled with the basic symbolism of that number. Say, for example, 7 would be Venus. 2 would be the belt of the zodiac. Take each of these 56 cards, 1 per day, and meditate on the symbolism of the number and the suit and how they correlate. If you color your own set of Major Arcana cards, and if you go through the process of creating a flashcard deck as I've described, and meditating on each of the cards, you'll be in a position to take any tarot deck that's based off of the standard 78 card model and understand the basic symbolism behind each of these cards. This will give you the ability to gain a deeper understanding of why the artist or designer chose the specific images that are portrayed on that card. It also allows you to disregard any of the images on each of the cards of whatever deck that you happen to have at hand and use your own intuition to interpret the reading, irrespective of the images chosen by the artist of that particular deck. In this case, any deck that you have can act as a physical proxy for your own internal deck.
Amazing.
Hi there, my name is Matt Carty, and I'm here to introduce the music on this episode. First of all, I want to say a big thanks to everyone that's been supporting us and everyone that's contributed to the show. If you haven't joined already, surf on over to luciferianresearch.org and check us out. Our first song is by a multi-talented artist. She goes by the name Row the Knife. Now, I actually ran into her on another network, and she's still going to make her way over to the LRS. But you've really got to check out her website. It's absolutely incredible. And we'll put the link down on the enhanced version of the podcast, as well as on the website. And she does paintings, drawings, sculptures, masks, headdresses, and of course music. So the song we're going to play is actually a ritual chant called a radius chant. And there's also a video for that I've linked up on the LRS. And here it is.
Now I'm going to perform a tarot reading for one of the members of the LRS who submitted a question. This will be a 3-card spread, and I'll draw those 3 cards from a full deck of 78 tarot cards. Her name is Reggie, and this is her question.
Currently, I am going through a custody battle with my grandson, and I would like to know what are the possible outcomes to the situation.
Okay, so now I'm going to shuffle the deck while thinking about the question. I'll be using the Thoth deck for this. It's the deck that was created by Crowley and Harris. I like this one because the artwork is so amazing. And the first card is the star. The root symbol of this card is Aquarius. It's one of the major arcana cards. It indicates a transition, a major change in what's been going on in the past to a new state. This card, being the first card, represents something that occurred in the past. Aquarius itself is an air sign. Air rules the intellect and the mind. This includes both the logical and the intuitive aspects of the mind. It's also a very independent and free-thinking card. The traditional image associated with the zodiacal sign of Aquarius is the water bearer. So while it's an air sign, it carries the water within it. Now, my intuition is telling me that this is referring to the process of using the mind to overpower the emotional states that are naturally arising, usually in a dominating way, a way that suppression and avoidance. So I'm seeing that in the past there was this situation of frustrated emotion involved in what precipitated this custody battle. I'm specifically referring to your role in this because I'm giving you the insight into your own situation here. So there was a point where you were experiencing these intense emotional states and trying to suppress them and ignore them. But it was because of the pressure involved in this that there was the need to seek freedom from these limitations, the ability to be who you were and not try and mask or suppress these natural feelings that were coming up, but to express them in a healthy manner. And it was that drive that that is still there with you now, and that's providing you with support and strength in your quest to gain your own liberty to be who you are. Also, I get the impression that a lot of these goals that you have for yourself, that you project these onto your grandchild, and this is influencing the manner in which you are going about this as well. The second card that comes up represents things that are going on in the present, patterns that are occurring right now and have been leading up to the present as well. You receive the 10 of Cups. This is a minor arcana card. 10 represents the planet Earth, and that's symbolic of the physical realm, material existence, and the culmination or fruition of creative energies put out there in the past. Cups is the suit that represents the element of water. Water is the emotions. So put together, this represents the manifestation of emotions. These are emotions that started in you a while ago, but are just now coming to their full manifestation. Taken in consideration with the previous card and the insights that we gained in that card about the emotions that you had been suppressing at the time and trying to maintain control of, that those are now starting to, you're finally allowing them to be released and to allow them expression in your life. This must feel very healing for you. My only advice at this point would be to continue doing what you're doing, and just to make sure that you don't take on too much at once. The third and final card represents patterns that are going to be entering your life in the future. Now this is relatively soon, but it could be within the next 6 months or so. This reading turned up with the 6 of Wands for you in this position. The number 6 correlates to the sun, and Wands relates to the element of fire, which are the passions, the fiery passions such as lust, rage, ambition. This is a very intense card. Number 6, the sun, is obviously related to fire, being a giant ball of fire, the sun. But more importantly, it represents those core ideals, those things in you that when you are actively pursuing them, you feel a fierce passion and desire for success and achievement in those realms. These are your high ideals and your ultimate goals. In this context, I would interpret the fire then as a driving passion to accomplish these goals. I anticipate a time in the future coming up shortly that this type of pattern being in your life would be very favorable to you. It's almost like a challenge, that it's something that you're going to need to prevail. It's something that you'll have to start training now, or start to learn how to call up in yourself. You can't despair at any point, and you'll have to be able to call up this passionate drive within you. To summarize the entire pattern that we see before us with these 3 cards, we see that in the past there was a situation in which where you felt that you had to suppress your naturally arising emotions. And this caused a desire to escape this situation in order to be truly more yourself. Now the efforts that you've made have given you some level of success, in which you have been able to release some of these previously suppressed emotions. And coming up in the future, we are seeing that now with this new level of self-awareness, you are going to have to call upon reserves of passionate strength and devotion to your goals in order to overcome some of the trials that are coming up within the next 6 months. I sincerely hope you get what you need out of that, Reggie, and good luck with your situation.
I wonder if I'm doing the right thing.
I know you are. The mystic voices from the astral abode never speak falsely.
Reggie runs a network called Eclectic Compass that she'd like to tell you a little bit about. Here's Reggie talking a little bit about that network.
It's lifelong practitioners or beginners still searching for a path. We all need a little direction sometimes. The purpose of the compass is to provide the community with what they will need to navigate the ins and outs of a cult lifestyle. So we have, I think, about 24 groups now. And they cover anything from divination to witchcraft. We're adding some, I guess, alchemy to it, even though that's something that really I'm the only one who has an interest in. So, and I have a very elementary education on it. So, and then we have a psychic empathy group. We cover all areas right now. We also have set up Peddler's Pass, which is a group set up to allow other sites to advertise, and stores, people who have crafts. I advertised a haunted doll.
Now, wait a minute. I don't want to do any business with any spooks.
LRS member Kelly Redhead sent us some insights into the tarot that she's gained over the years that she's been practicing. Here are a few of those insights. I always read the cards upright. Between the suit of swords and some of the negative major arcana, there seems more than enough negative cards. Additionally, I think that reversed cards can be confusing. I used to get aggravated when the Seven of Cups would show up in my own readings. The tendency is to think of the Seven of Cups as a negative card, meaning one has an overactive imagination and nothing will materialize. I have found the Seven of Cups to mean that one has various skills, abilities, and options available. No daydreams here, but ability to dream things into existence using a variety of means. I think the Seven of Cups is particularly useful for the creative person and the Luciferian. The Three of Swords is a card I think I'd like to remove from the deck. The good news is that it doesn't necessarily mean heartbreak. The Three of Swords could be indicative of stress, sometimes just for a day. Okay, I can see the need for reverse cards. The Three of Swords reversed would indicate a less traumatic situation. Shorter spreads. I often use a 5-card spread laid out from left to right. Generally, the first 2 cards are the past, the middle card the present, and the last 2 cards the future. Sometimes these spreads are very effective, though I occasionally find that the past isn't reflected at all, just the present and the future.
I'm going to give you a little surprise.
Our next song for this show is by Compella, who you may recall from our first episode. He graciously submitted his brand new unreleased track, which you will be able to find on his upcoming album. You can check out Compella on MySpace at myspace.com/Compella1. And here it is, Ex-Expressionist.
Once upon a time, not long ago, when it was all about skills, now who you know. Hip-hop was a place we could build and grow. Now it's all about ice and overhyped flows. I spit sick out of spite, I'm 5 clicks out my mind. Rhymes unstable, able to trigger a fault line. Get in and get mine, get some if you wanna try. Get ready, rock steady, get up and get live. Leave a 2-tone color on the side of your cheek. Impact like Dan Hardy when I smash on the beat. Collapsing puppet rappers like a Pentagon wing. I'm a supernatural disaster, the hell I bring. Living life my way, don't cost a goddamn thing. I'll be damned if I let it pass me and abandon my dreams. Not for fame, love, or money, I just wanna be free. I don't play my position, I'm the whole fucking team. Question your thinking, question your eyes. Quest for the truth through illusions and lies. When the timing is right, align the 5 elements, all intertwined. I'm the ex-expressionist. Question your thinking, question your eyes. eyes. Quest for the truth through illusions and lies. When the timing is right, align the 5 elements, darkness and light. I'm the expressionist. Ahead of my time, forging a path along the landscape. Fuck being enslaved to your federal prime rate. Incredible mass rape, white collar crime wave. Like father, like son, like the Bushes have done. Ain't shit gonna change, switch the figures on top. Make a promise to deliver, then the riddle flip-flops. Trilateral commission, got you by the balls and cock. More money for the rich, less freedom for the flock. Best believe it, what you don't know will kill you. They still do all the things they couldn't do on film, dude. Keep it chrome close and nose clean. They sneak it like Shinobi. I'm trying to be a patriot, they act like they don't know me. In fact, it's pretty lonely when the majority is brainwashed. Ain't even aware of this American jihad. Arrogant faith wads, angle hated the Arabic. None of your take contains God, what a fucking embarrassment. Question your thinking, question your eyes. Quest for the truth through illusions and lies. When the timing is right, align the 5 elements, all intertwined. I'm the expressionist. Question your thinking, question your eyes. Quest for the truth through illusions and lies. When the timing is right, align the 5 elements, darkness and light. I'm the expressionist. Shamanistic ritual for your audio visual. Get the feeling so visceral, undisputed, invincible. Fortified like foreign citadels, crosses visible. Under crusade, every interval. Crush the pit of hell, keep the casualties to a minimal. Seek the skillful kill, skid it well. Split the scene and leave no trace to bid you hell. I beg your pardon, these peasants are led to slaughter. Ambitious to be your martyr, envision they get to author and stated and integrated. When trained and miseducated, risque if the country painted the stain on the children's faces. Discarded, disheartened, distant, and typically disregarded. Scared of tearing your wallet, breeding despair in your conscience, feeding hysteria, profits, all these nefarious pockets. Train the proletariat, enslaved by economic stare. In disbelief as the planet drops to its knees. What's happening? We used to live so confidently. Question your thinking, question your eyes. Quest for the truth through illusions and lies. When the timing is right, align the 5 elements, all intertwined. I'm the expressionist. Question your thinking, question your eyes. Quest for the truth through illusions and lies. When the timing is right, align the 5 elements, darkness and light. I'm the expressionist.
The member who submitted this question is Vintage Angel, who you might remember from the previous episode. This is her question.
Well, I've been feeling a little torn about which path exactly to follow. I've been running across many different people from different paths with different beliefs. And this has led me to question my own path. I would like to shed some light on which path is the right path for me to follow. Because as of late, I've been feeling a little torn. I choose really to balance myself, you know, to have a little bit of everything within me. But it gets confusing sometimes also, because so many different paths are so opposite. You know, I mean, there is no like all together oneness, whatever. Everybody's opposite. Everybody's just in different directions and stuff. I've learned so much about myself spiritually, and I've learned so much about different paths, and I believe in a lot of different paths. But the problem is, I would like to know what is right for me.
Okay, well, that's a great question to ask. So I'm going to be shuffling the cards here while I think about that, while I let that, those ideas percolate through my mind. And the first card will be indicative of something that happened in the past that's continuing to influence this quest of yours. The card that we have here is the Lust card. In traditional decks, it's called the Strength card, but Crowley decided to call it Lust. The image itself depicts the Whore of Babylon riding the seven-headed beast of Revelations. The core symbolism of this card is Leo, the zodiacal sign of Leo, which is a fire sign. It typically represents somebody who likes being in the limelight. The primary image associated with Leo is the lion. In many of the traditional images of this card, you see a maiden taming a lion. Sometimes she's holding the mouth of the lion shut, and sometimes she's holding it open. And in Crowley's version of the card, she is riding the beast. All of these are symbols of varying levels of control over the sexual energies. In the traditional image of the maiden holding the lion with the mouth closed, that is more of a puritanical representation of controlling the sexual urges, and more in terms of suppressing them rather than allowing a more controlled expression of them, which would be in the cards where she's holding the mouth of the lion open. In Crowley's version, it's unrestrained lust and full guiltless self-gratification. Now, the first thing that comes to mind would be to do energy work, to work with some of these intense passions and energies that you apparently have within you. Now, that could be one avenue of study that you could use that would utilize some of this experience and internal energy that you have within you. Now, some types of energy work that you might be interested in exploring would be sex magic, for example. There's a lot of great information in the Taoist literature. They call it Taoist internal alchemy. There's also the more Western versions of sex magic that you can find in, there are several books around, and I can tell you about those later. We also have Tantra that you can explore. You might also be interested in using some of this energy for healing work. One of the more popular forms of energy healing work would be Reiki. Huna also works with a lot of this type of energy as well. And that's a spiritual, a type of shamanism that comes out of Hawaii. The second card tells us about the current events that are happening in your life and the patterns that you're currently dealing with right now. In this reading, you turned up the art card. This is another card that Crowley decided to change the traditional name from. The traditional name for this one is Temperance. The core symbol behind this card is the zodiacal sign of Sagittarius. This also happens to be a fire sign, so we have a lot of passion showing up in this reading. The core meaning of the art or temperance card relates to the combining of two apparently opposite forces or energies. The art in which you learn how to do these types of things is typically considered alchemy. Now, this connects back to the suggestion of Taoist internal alchemy, because it'll also work with the sexual and passionate energies that you have that have been coming up in your past and continue to the present. In addition to that type of energy work, there's also more introspective techniques that you can use to create your own internal harmony. These would include lucid dreaming practices and also internal dialoguing, which is a technique that comes from psychotherapy. It's closely related to what some call pathworking or scrying on the astral plane. and it could connect with your lucid dreaming practices as well. The third card is some type of opportunity that may come up in the future for further development. The card that I show for your reading this time is the Hierophant. In some of the older decks, this is called the Pope. This card essentially depicts a religious leader or an initiator. The core symbolism of this third card also happens to be one of the 12 signs of the zodiac as well. It is Taurus. This one is actually an earth sign. This indicates to me that as you gain a lot more of experience in some of these studies that you're going to be undertaking, that you'll be in a position that you can share some of that knowledge that you've gained and start to try and develop your leadership skills in that direction as well. And that this will allow you to further develop yourself. To summarize this 3-card spread, first we had the Lust card, which indicated a wellspring of passionate emotions that suggested that you would benefit from study of energy work and sex magic. The current events that you've been going through have allowed you to start connecting different parts of yourself that you normally wouldn't associate. And this is indicating that alchemy and lucid dreaming would be very profitable for you to work on at this point, and even utilizing some of the techniques of psychotherapy in order to further gain some of your own inner knowledge of yourself and how you operate and the things that drive you. The final card indicated to us through the Hierophant that you will be in a position that you can share some of this knowledge and gain some personal development through taking on those roles.
You know, it was your psychic concentration that did it.
Of course, I exerted every bit of my telepathic powers.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Vintage Angel wanted us to mention another network that she helps out with. It's called Shadow of the Black Rose, and the URL for that is shadowoftheblackrose.ning.com. This is a site you might be interested in checking out if you're interested in Gothic culture, the occult, dark art, sex magic. If you enjoyed the previous episode about lucid dreaming, you might want to check out the lucid dreaming group on Shadow of the Black Rose.
No, don't faint.
My name is Naya Aerodiode, and I've been reading the cards for 15 years, and I have chosen to talk about the star today. It's number 17 in the Major Arcana, and it's pretty close to the end of the Fool's Journey, and I like the idea of the Fool's Journey as the Major Arcana, you know, and all of these different aspects of your life that you experience and all these different people and characters and situations that you come across. And the star is number 17, and it comes right before the moon, right before the sun, and then judgment and ascension. So for me, the star is about reaching towards your highest aspirations, and it comes directly after the tower, number 16, the tower. And in my Ciro Marchetti deck, I use the Ciro Marchetti Legacy of the Divine decks as one of my favorites. And in the Ciro Marchetti deck, he drew this beautiful picture of a tower crumbling and being struck by lightning in number 16. And then the star, number 17, it shows a beautiful image of a nude woman clothed in a kind of diaphanous cloak of stars, and she's leaping up from that same tower that was pictured in number 16. She's leaping up gloriously and beautifully towards the sky, holding a star in her hand. And so I really like the way this illustrator put the same image very carefully on both of those cards. You really get the idea that it's a continuation. It's that after everything is destroyed in the tower, after you think everything that you know is there, and now it's gone in one flash of lightning. Oya sweeps down with her tornado from the sky and destroys it, you know? Out of the rubble, out of the ruins, there's this spark, this little shimmer of hope that suddenly when you realize you have nothing left to lose, you can pull up that little shimmer of hope, and then you can really ascend towards what you were meant to do. You know, there have been times in my life where I knew that I had to give up everything that was comfortable and familiar so that I could reach a new level of experience, so that I could, you know, do more with my life. And sometimes it's chosen, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're forced to do that, but the hope that comes from the star, I think, is something that in our lives, when we see, you know, when we have our foundation shattered, looking at this card will help us realize that this is an opportunity for us to ascend. In our particular circles, we honor the 4 directions as well as up and down. And we associate the direction of up with the star because it's, you know, it sounds like for a while there I was saying, you know, the star has to happen out of losing everything and then becoming more. But we should always be striving towards that. We should always be reaching, proverbially speaking, towards the stars. And so that's a big emphasis that we put on our work and our specific group is, you know, everything that you're doing should be reaching towards your star, you know. Keep your eye on the goal and keep doing what you're doing to make it happen. You know, for us, we often use this image a lot in our circle, and I find this card ends up on my altar quite often.
I fear that is utterly impossible. You have completely destroyed the rhythm of the astral vibration. You have displeased Carly, the goddess with 4 arms.
I'll apologize to her, one hand at a time.
And our final song for this episode is a brand new track by Pleasure the Priestess. Visit pleasurethepriestess.com or come on down to the musicians and producers group on the LRS to find out more about any of the artists we've been featuring in this episode or previous episodes. This song's called Illuminate. your love. Don't forget your love. Don't forget your love. Don't forget my love. Don't forget your love. Don't forget your love. Don't forget your love. Don't forget my love.
I was in the LRS chat room, and Victoria mentioned that she wanted to get a tarot reading. So I got her to send her question, and we're going to do it on the podcast today. Here's her question.
Hi, this is Victoria, and this is my question for the tarot reading. Is my business going to work? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to shuffle the cards while I think about that. I'm going to use the entire deck to draw from. The first card that comes up is the Three of Discs. The 3 is representative of the planet Saturn, which is limitation. And discs is the element of earth. Earth relates to health, wealth, family. Those types of concerns are involved with the element of earth. To put them together, obviously in the past you experienced some sort of restriction in this realm. Probably in all 3 main categories. You felt a restriction in terms of the money that you had available to you. There was a health concern, and it put a strain on your family situation. This is one of the motivating factors that caused you to want to do this business in the first place. So that's what this card is telling us here. That root event, that core seed is where your business is grown from, and it's good to keep that in mind. The second card we get is the Major Arcana card, the Priestess. This card is connected with the moon. As the second card, it represents things that are going on in the present. The moon card typically represents something to do with the unconscious mind or the intuitive mind. To me, this indicates that you have been drifting a bit from your original focus, that you've gotten a bit distracted in the particulars, in all the little details, and you've gotten a bit astray from the original core stream of energy that drove you into doing this business in the first place. I would say that at this point, you need to take a step back and re-examine your motivations for this business and reorient yourself to your highest ideals. The third card is an influence that's coming up in the future. The card that came up for you in this position is the Devil card. This is a Major Arcana card that is associated with Capricorn. Capricorn is a sign of the zodiac associated with the element of Earth. So again, this is discussing the material realm and wealth, which is consistent with the question. Now, Capricorn is a dynamic sign. It's got energy behind it, but it still has stability. So it's like a large moving force with a lot of momentum. Now that's something that you're going to have to continue to build up the momentum in increments. Momentum will be the key to your future success in this business. If you have the discipline to continue providing a consistent amount of effort into this business, it will continue to grow, and you will be able to get through any kind of rough points with the momentum you've built. So in summary, when we look at these three cards together, we see that in the past you had material constriction in your life that affected multiple aspects. This is the root cause that ultimately led you to focus on this business. The priestess shows up as the moon, letting you know that you need to maintain your focus on the original goal. The devil shows up in order to let you know that you're going to need to build up enough momentum to get through some of the rough points that any business would encounter. Also, at the same time, it warns that not to let your business control you as well if it gets too big. Learn to trust other people to take over some of the functions and let yourself get enough time away from it and time to yourself. Continue to remember what you're in it for.
We girls can't keep anything from you, I guess, huh?
One card that I feel a particular affinity for is the Tower. This is the major arcana card that's associated with the planet Mars. The first time I encountered this card was actually the first time I encountered the tarot. It was on a page in a book that I found on my dad's shelf when I was a kid. I was flipping through it, and on this one page it had a few images of a particular tarot deck, and one of the images was of the Tower. And in this particular image, it had two people that were completely pale white, almost like corpses. And it looked like they were walking on their hands. And they were falling out of the tower, but they were so close to the ground, it just gave that impression. It really chilled and excited me. I was Christian still at the time, so it really scared me as well. It felt evil. Anyways, later on, when I found out a bit more about what it meant, and after I had left Christianity, I felt myself drawn to this particular card even more. And what I really like about it is that it represents a sudden change, a drastic discovery that something that you once believed to be true is false. But it liberates you because it eliminates a falsehood that you've held in your mind. And it just feels like a very powerful card to me as well. The connection with the Tower of Babel to the imagery on the card is something that I connect with as well. The building of the Tower of Babel story is an attempt to reach divinity, to attain godhood, and that's definitely a Luciferian quest that I resonate with.
He knows everything.
I'd like to let you know about a tarot deck that was created by two of the LRS members. Edward O'Toole and Eris X collaborated on creating the Bestian Tarot. You can check it out at Edward's site, aesthetica.com. And if you go there, you can check out some of the images of the tarot deck, and you can even get a free automated reading. If you're interested in getting a tarot reading from me, you can get some more information about that at my website, jeremycrow.com.
The crystal has spoken.
So that's the end of the show. As always, you can join us at luciferianresearch.org. Our next episode will be about sex magic. If you've been enjoying the show,
hit that subscribe button.
My mind's made up. I told you I'm leaving you. My astral vibrations just don't coincide with yours.